My name is Abigail, a 26-year-old woman, tied the knot 10 months ago after a 6-year-long relationship. Despite extending invitations to everyone, my parents and my younger sister, who is 24, did not attend. My sister's absence didn't surprise me much because we have never been particularly close, but my parents not showing up was unexpected and disappointing. My parents have always shown a clear preference for my sister, praising her achievements and looks over mine. My sister, stunning and successful, has excelled in everything from modeling during her college years to swiftly climbing the corporate ladder with a business degree. In contrast, I've led a more ordinary life, which I'm quite content with, despite not receiving the same level of admiration or affection from my parents. Over the years, I've made peace with this disparity in their affection and stopped striving for their approval, focusing instead on living a life that makes me happy. I maintained a basic relationship with them to avoid unnecessary drama, knowing how much they valued appearances. When I got engaged to my longtime boyfriend, I invited my parents to the wedding. Their absence was a shock to many guests, who expected at least a token appearance given the occasion. There was no explanation offered for their absence, which only highlighted the rift between us. Now, as my sister prepares for her own lavish wedding, many relatives have decided not to attend, citing the imbalance in how my parents treat us. This has led my parents to unfairly accuse me of ruining their reputation, further straining our relationship. Despite this, I remain focused on my happiness and the life I've built with my partner, distancing myself from the family drama while still wishing my sister the best for her big day. A few days after my wedding, I felt the need to address a lingering issue with my parents. Even before the celebration, I had noticed they seemed distant. Attempts to reach out went unanswered, which I found odd, but with the wedding preparations in full swing, I had little time to dwell on it. However, once the festivities had passed, I needed clarity and decided to confront them. When I finally managed to get them on the phone, they expressed disappointment over missing the wedding, claiming they hadn't received a formal invitation. This confused me greatly. My husband and I had been thorough with our guest list, double-checking to ensure no one was omitted. We had sent out both physical and electronic invitations, and I was certain my parents had been included. Their claim on the phone seemed off to me. As they voiced how insulted they felt, I double-checked the invitations myself and confirmed they had indeed been sent. Realizing they were trying to manipulate the situation, I chose to apologize for any misunderstanding and ended the call, although I was quite frustrated by their attempt to shift the blame onto me. Discussing the incident with my husband, he suggested that their absence might be due to their upset over me marrying before my sister. He recalled their reaction when I first announced my engagement. They seemed shocked, not joyful. At the time, I thought they were just surprised by the news itself, given our somewhat strained relationship. I had made it a point to tell them before making a social media announcement out of respect and duty as their daughter. My husband pointed out that their behavior might stem from their disappointment about the wedding's timing relative to my sister's marital status. This perspective helped me see their actions in a new light, revealing possible deeper family dynamics at play. He quickly noticed their unhappy expressions, which were far from celebratory, during the engagement party. Opting not to discuss it with me then, he didn't want to add to my stress. At the party, I saw my parents isolated in a corner, sulking rather than mingling. When he politely approached them, he overheard them comforting my sister, who was crying on the phone. It was clear they weren't thrilled about my engagement. He pieced things together, even though he couldn't catch the entire conversation. Realizing he was nearby, my parents quickly ended the call and tried to act normal, but the damage was done. I was shocked when he later revealed these observations, which clarified many doubts. He had withheld this to spare me additional worry amid wedding preparations. After the wedding, which they missed, I suspect deliberately despite my meticulous invitation handling, I resolved to cut ties, tired of being sidelined in favor of my sister. Recently, I learned my sister is engaged, planning a lavish wedding, which my parents are proudly funding. They've started booking grand venues, and she's eyeing dresses from high-end designers. While I stayed out of it, my parents accused me of sabotaging my sister's wedding by bad-mouthing them to relatives, leading to a lack of enthusiasm for the event. Confused, I denied the accusations, emphasizing our estrangement and my disinterest in family conflicts. They insisted that my negative comments over the past months had influenced our relative's disinterest in attending her upcoming celebrations. I became inadvertently involved in a family conflict because of a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. My sister was deeply hurt to learn that our family might not attend her engagement party. She had discussed her feelings with a cousin, who then shared some troubling information with her. Apparently, there was a rumor that I had been spreading negative stories about our parents' absence at my own wedding. According to the rumor, my parents skipped my wedding because they preferred that my sister, who they saw as more successful and attractive, marry first. This portrayal of our parents caused a rift, leading relatives to doubt whether to attend not just the engagement party, but potentially the wedding as well. This situation stemmed from the confusion and hurt feelings surrounding my wedding. Whenever relatives inquired why our parents were absent, I candidly shared my frustrations. I felt betrayed that my parents had prioritized sparing my sister's feelings over attending my special day. This honesty, which I believed was justified, inadvertently painted my parents in a negative light. In my discussions with family members, I never sought sympathy. I simply stated the facts as I saw them. However, I hadn't anticipated how quickly these conversations would spread throughout the family. The misunderstanding grew, leading many relatives to believe that my parents had intentionally missed my wedding to avoid upsetting my sister, and had even tried to make me believe that they hadn't been invited. Now, this has escalated to the point where relatives are boycotting my sister's wedding. The cousin who relayed these developments to my sister enjoys gossip, which might explain her eagerness to share what she knew. Amidst this turmoil, my parents are now under the impression that I deliberately sabotaged their relationship with other family members. This entire episode has taught me a harsh lesson about the consequences of sharing personal grievances within the family. Moving forward, I realize the importance of handling such sensitive matters more privately, as the fallout from this has affected many more people than I had ever intended. I have long harbored feelings of jealousy toward my sister, and this has profoundly influenced my actions and relationships within our family. Due to my resentment, I admit that I spread rumors to portray her in a negative light, which I made to seem as if my husband was the source. But contrary to these claims, nothing like what I suggested ever occurred. My relatives have accused me of deliberately not inviting them to events, using this as a pretext to gain sympathy and cast my sister as the antagonist. However, I am confident that my husband has been honest with me, and I genuinely believed I had sent out all the invitations. Despite my certainty about the invitations, I feel uneasy about the impact of my actions. My words have led some relatives to decide against attending my sister's wedding. I have openly shared the true reason why our parents missed my wedding, hoping to clear the air. There have always been tensions between my sister and me, stemming from our childhood. She often overshadowed me, excelling academically, athletically, and socially. Even though she achieved more, she seemed compelled to belittle me with snide remarks and foster a group of friends who harassed me. As the older sibling, I tried to ignore their petty behavior, viewing it as an annoying but minor issue. My sister continued this pattern of mockery well into adulthood, which led me to withdraw from family gatherings to avoid conflict. I prefer to avoid drama and confrontation, choosing instead to distance myself from those I do not get along with. Over the years, my attendance at family events has become rare, limited only to essential gatherings. This estrangement isn't due to a lack of effort. I did try to forge a better relationship during our younger years. However, I eventually realized that she was not someone I wanted in my life, an epiphany that has only been reinforced over time with both my sister and recently with my parents. This realization led me to a decision to maintain my distance, preserving my peace of mind, and I've come to terms with this decision, free from regret. Sometimes letting go is necessary for one's well-being, and that is the path I have chosen with my sister and, to some extent, with my parents as well. Growing up, my sense of family was anchored primarily in my parents because, despite the pain they'd caused me, they were all I had. Sure, I had other relatives, but it never felt quite the same. However, I've come to realize that perhaps these relatives understand and embody the concept of family far better than my parents ever did. Recently, after reading some insightful comments online, I made the decision to stop communicating with my parents. I realized that sharing my truth with the rest of my family wasn't as daunting as my parents had made it seem. When I finally opened up about my experiences, I didn't feel guilty. Rather, I felt liberated. As expected, when I started sharing my story, my parents bombarded me with messages, accusing me of tarnishing their image deliberately because I was supposedly jealous of my sister. We ended up on a phone call where I confronted these accusations head-on. I admitted to feeling jealous of my sister, not for her accomplishments or looks, but because my parents had always shown her favoritism. It wasn't just the world that chose her over me. My own parents did too, and that hurt more than they could understand. For years, I silenced my feelings, hoping that one day my parents would recognize and appreciate me for who I am. But that acknowledgement never came. Instead, their favoritism was blatant and unwavering, which only deepened my feelings of neglect. I had tolerated their unfair treatment in silence, but now I was choosing to speak out. If they were concerned about their reputation, maybe they should have behaved like the good parents they purported to be. If they had, I would have had nothing but positive stories to share. They crafted this narrative with their actions, and now they must face the repercussions. They accused me of playing the victim and seeking sympathy, but maybe that was exactly what I needed to do. Instead of incessantly calling me, trying to make me retract my statements, perhaps they should explain themselves to our relatives and show them that they are not who I say they are. But for me, I'm done pretending and covering for them. If bringing my story to light makes them uncomfortable, maybe they should reflect on why that is. I had reached a point where I felt that being more actively involved might be a better use of everyone's time. However, it became clear that continuing discussions with me wouldn't lead to any progress. I had already expressed my thoughts, and thankfully, my relatives believed me, which was a relief. I firmly decided that I wouldn't solve this issue for them. It wasn't my job to manage anyone else's reputation but my own. My parents were taken aback by my stance, likely because they weren't accustomed to seeing me act this way. As someone who generally avoids confrontation and tends to be quiet and introverted, my sudden assertiveness was unexpected. I think they assumed I would just let the matter slide like usual, but I was tired of being pushed around with the hope that they might someday recognize my worth. After a brief pause, my parents responded. They interpreted my actions as a rejection of them, labeling them as inadequate parents compared to how they raised my sister. They decided it was time to step back. They had always seen me as family, as their daughter, and hoped I would care. Yet, they thought I was pleased to see them struggle, so they declared they had no further expectations of me. I was now free to live my life as I wished without their interference. In their concluding remarks, they reminded me that we were both their daughters, perhaps thinking I felt overshadowed by my sister due to my insecurities. But they denied any fault in this disparity, placing the blame squarely on me. It took a significant amount of restraint to keep silent, knowing that arguing would only lead to more fruitless circular discussions. If they wanted to cast me as the villain to ease their conscience, so be it. At least it meant they would finally leave me alone. After this exchange, I felt a profound sense of relief. I had finally voiced the feelings I'd harbored for years. Regardless of the outcome of my sister's wedding or other family matters, I was no longer concerned. Those were their issues to resolve, not mine. A few days later, my sister reached out, criticizing my conversation with our parents. She said I was wrong to upset them after everything they had done for us as parents. But at that moment, I realized that standing up for myself was necessary, even if it meant facing criticism from those closest to me. It hadn't been easy dealing with my sister's attitude. She was behaving as if she were above everyone else, reveling in the chance to dominate the situation. Her pretense of grace and dignity was far from the truth, and it irked me so much that I chose not to respond to her message. Instead, I blocked her. I thought that would settle the matter, but soon after, my husband received a message from an unknown number. It was my sister, repeating her earlier sentiments to him and pressing him to persuade me to apologize to our parents for my supposed misdeeds. She insisted that as part of the family, he shouldn't just observe from the sidelines. Surprisingly, my husband found the whole situation amusing. He laughed it off, thinking it ridiculous that my family believed such tactics would change my mind. His reaction helped me see the lighter side of things, and I managed to shrug it off instead of getting overly upset. For the past few days, I hadn't shared much about the family drama with anyone because of my busy work schedule. However, if someone inquires or I bump into someone who might be interested, I won't hesitate to share my story. Although I'm not one to gossip, telling the truth about how my parents and sister have been acting seems justified if it brings some reality to light. After all, simply sharing the facts is enough to make them less favorable in the eyes of others. The irony is that while my parents are aware that I'm no longer holding back or protecting the family's reputation by remaining silent, they continue to escalate the situation by attempting manipulative tactics. A recent update from the family grapevine revealed that my parents have been spreading the narrative that I'm fabricating stories out of jealousy towards my sister's upcoming, more lavish wedding. Fortunately, many relatives are siding with me, finding my accounts more credible than my parents' forced narrative. When they confided in me about what my parents were saying behind my back, it only reinforced their misguided plan and turned the situation into a joke at their expense. This twist of fate feels like karma, and I'm relieved that their true colors are now visible to everyone. It's a relief to see that trying to tarnish my image has only backfired on them.